It was a busy Saturday afternoon at the local grocery store, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's name. The air hummed with the usual sounds of shopping carts rattling, the beep of cash registers, and the soft murmur of conversation. In the middle of it all, behind the counter, stood Emma, a young woman with soft brown hair tied in a messy bun, wearing the store's standard uniform. Her growing belly was visible beneath the apron, a gentle reminder that in a few months her life would change forever. Emma had been working all morning and into the afternoon, her feet aching with each step. Despite the exhaustion pulling at her, she tried her best to keep a smile on her face, chatting politely with customers and scanning their groceries, but it hadn't been an easy day. Rude comments and impatient customers had left her drained, and she longed for the moment she could finally clock out. Still, she carried on, trying to push through, knowing that the sooner she got to the end of her shift, the sooner she could head home and put her feet up. Little did she know, her day was about to take a turn that would change everything. As Emma scanned the last item for the customer in front of her, she noticed a new face approaching the counter. The man was in his mid-40s, wearing a well-tailored suit that seemed too expensive for a trip to the local grocery store. His slicked-back hair and sharp features only added to his overall air of arrogance. He stepped forward with a sense of entitlement, his eyes glancing at Emma as if he expected immediate service, without a hint of appreciation for the busy store. Finally, he muttered under his breath, clearly annoyed by the line of customers ahead of him, "I've been waiting forever." Emma forced a smile, doing her best to ignore his tone. She started scanning his items one by one, trying to keep the rhythm of her work smooth despite the growing tension, but the man wasn't patient. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, making it clear he wasn't happy with the pace. "Are you seriously taking this long?" he snapped, his voice louder now. "I don't have all day." Emma's fingers hovered over the next item. She was doing her best to hurry but didn't want to make a mistake. The pressure of the moment was making her heart race, but she kept her composure, glancing at him briefly before saying, "I'm sorry, sir. I'll be done in just a moment." He huffed loudly, his irritation turning into something far more biting. "You pregnant or something?" he sneered. "You shouldn't be working like this. It's obvious you can't handle it." The cruel remark stung. Emma's breath caught for a second, but she quickly masked her reaction. She forced herself to look up and meet his eyes, trying to stay professional. "I'm doing my best, sir. I apologize for the wait." But the man wasn't done. His eyes narrowed and he leaned in a little closer, making Emma feel trapped behind the counter. "You should be at home resting. It's not like this job is important enough to risk your health for." His voice grew louder, the words dripping with disdain. "Honestly, I don't know how people like you even get hired for this." Emma's hands trembled slightly as she finished scanning his groceries. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, but she took a deep breath. She had to stay calm. She had to stay professional. Still, something inside her began to break. Emma's hands shook as she bagged the last of the man's items. She could feel his eyes boring into her, waiting for her to finish so he could leave. But the tension in the air was thick, and she could tell he wasn't finished. Her breath hitched when he suddenly slammed his hand down on the counter, making her jump. "You're not even fit for this job," he barked, his voice rising. "You can't even do something as simple as scan groceries without messing it up." His eyes narrowed and a smirk twisted his lips. "What kind of place hires a pregnant woman like you to work here anyway? You're just wasting time. You should be at home, not standing here trying to do a job you clearly can't handle." Emma froze. The words hit her like a slap across the face. She tried to keep her composure, but she could feel the sting of humiliation creeping up her throat. Her stomach twisted, and a lump formed in her chest. She wanted to cry, to scream at him, but instead she stood there, her hands trembling, trying to hold it all in. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her throat was tight, the tears threatening to spill over, but she swallowed them down. She didn't want to break down in front of him, not in front of anyone. "Are you even capable of doing this job, or is it just too much for you to handle with that big belly?" His voice was louder now, and the cruelty in his words echoed through the store. "Maybe you should just quit and go rest before you get hurt, or worse, do something stupid." Emma's heart pounded in her chest. Every word he said felt like a direct blow to her sense of self-worth. She wasn't some helpless woman who couldn't manage her life. She was strong. She had to be. She had no choice but to work, to make ends meet for herself and her baby. But at that moment, standing behind the register, she felt small and powerless. Her vision blurred, and she quickly blinked back the tears that threatened to fall. She took a shaky breath, steadying herself. She had to hold it together. She couldn't let this man see how much his words had affected her. The store around her seemed to grow quieter. The customers in line began to notice the scene, their eyes shifting from Emma to the rude man. A few exchanged uneasy glances, some standing still in shock, unsure of what to do. A mother with two young children stared at the confrontation, her mouth slightly agape. An elderly man behind the customer in the line glanced nervously at Emma, his wrinkled brow furrowing. A couple behind him whispered to each other, their faces a mixture of confusion and discomfort, but none of them spoke up, and the silence grew heavier with each passing second. It was as if the store had frozen, the only sound the sharp voice of the customer berating Emma. She could feel their eyes on her, some out of concern, others with judgment. In that moment she felt completely exposed, like the entire world was watching her crumble under the weight of his words. She wanted to shrink away, to escape to somewhere far from the hurt and humiliation, but she couldn't. She had to keep going, and yet, even as the store held its breath, a small voice in Emma's mind whispered that things couldn't stay this way forever. Something had to change. As the tension in the store reached its peak, a soft shuffle of footsteps sounded behind the rude customer. Johnny Depp, dressed casually in a leather jacket and sunglasses, had been quietly shopping in the aisles before the scene unfolded. He was just another face in the crowd, someone who blended in despite his undeniable star presence. But the moment the customer's voice rose again, Johnny's calm demeanor shifted. His eyes narrowed slightly as he heard the man's harsh words, his body language subtly changing. He didn't rush or make a dramatic entrance. Instead, he simply stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the interaction. The store, still silent and tense, seemed to pause as he approached, his movements steady and purposeful. Johnny stopped beside the counter, his stance tall but not threatening. He looked at Emma, offering a brief, understanding glance before his attention shifted to the customer. The man didn't notice him at first, too consumed with his tirade against the pregnant cashier, but Johnny's presence was undeniable. It wasn't the kind of celebrity presence that demanded attention. It was something quieter, more commanding. Johnny had a way of standing still and exuding confidence without having to raise his voice. "Hey, buddy," Johnny said, his voice smooth but firm, carrying just enough weight to make the rude customer stop in his tracks. "I think you've said enough." The customer, clearly annoyed that someone dared interrupt him, turned his head, sneering. His eyes scanned Johnny up and down, clearly not recognizing him, and he smirked. "And who are you?" The man spat, unimpressed by the casual appearance of the stranger standing next to him, some wannabe tough guy trying to play hero. Johnny didn't flinch. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, maintaining eye contact. "No," he replied, his tone almost casual. "I'm just a guy who doesn't like seeing people treated like crap." His voice dropped a little, just enough for the nearby customers to hear. "And I don't think you're in any position to judge anyone, especially someone who's doing their best to work while carrying a child." The customer's face twisted in confusion for a second, then anger, as he opened his mouth to retaliate, but Johnny wasn't finished. "I've seen a lot of things in my life," Johnny continued, his voice now colder, "but a grown man picking on a woman who's pregnant, that's a new low." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "If you've got an ounce of decency left, you'll apologize." Now, for the first time since he'd begun yelling, the customer faltered, his sneer wavered, and a few customers behind him exchanged glances. The air in the store shifted, and even the loud beeping of the register seemed quieter. The man opened his mouth, but the words didn't come. Johnny stood there, unwavering, his gaze locked on the rude customer who was still visibly taken aback. The once loud and confident man was now forced into a moment of reflection. Johnny's calm, steady voice broke through the tension, making everyone around them pause. "Do you really think it's okay to treat someone like Emma that way?" Johnny asked, his voice quieter now, but every bit as powerful. His words weren't a shout or an accusation, they were simply a challenge, one that demanded a real answer. He stepped closer, but he didn't get in the man's face. he simply positioned himself in a way that showed he wasn't backing down. "Look around," Johnny continued, his voice a little stronger now, as if he was addressing not just the customer but the entire store. "This isn't just about a job or a simple mistake. You're talking about a woman who's carrying a child, trying to do her best, and you think it's acceptable to treat her like she's less than you." The customer opened his mouth to respond, but the words got stuck in his throat. Johnny wasn't finished. "Emma doesn't deserve to be belittled because of her pregnancy," Johnny said, his tone firm but not hostile. "She's working hard, probably more than you could ever understand. And for what? A couple of rude comments from someone like you." The entire store had fallen into a heavy silence. The hum of the register had stopped, and even the customers in line were holding their breath, waiting for the next move. The man who had been so obnoxious moments ago now seemed smaller, unsure, and visibly shaken. His face had gone red, his once defiant posture now slumped, as if Johnny's words had deflated his arrogance in an instant. Johnny took a step back, giving the man space, but never breaking eye contact. "So here's the thing," he said, almost casually. "If you've got any ounce of decency left in you, you'll do the right thing and apologize, not just to Emma, but to yourself. Because the way you've been acting, it's not just cruel, it's pathetic." The man's face twisted in frustration, but the words Johnny had spoken lingered in the air. For the first time he didn't know how to respond. The bravado that had fueled him moments earlier was gone, replaced with an uncomfortable silence. He shifted his weight, his eyes flicking from Johnny to Emma, and then to the other customers who were now watching the scene unfold. The room felt heavy, as if everyone was waiting for the inevitable. Finally, the man opened his mouth, and this time, the words were different. "And sorry," he muttered, his voice small, barely audible over the quiet. His eyes darted between Emma and Johnny, and for the first time there was a hint of genuine remorse in his expression. "I shouldn't have said that. I didn't mean it." The store was still silent, the awkward tension lingering in the air, but there was something else now: relief. Emma, who had been holding back tears for so long, let out a shaky breath. Johnny's intervention had made all the difference. It wasn't just that the man had apologized, it was that for once someone had stood up for her when she felt too small to fight back. The customer mumbled something else under his breath, but Johnny wasn't paying attention anymore. His gaze had softened as he turned to Emma, offering her a small, reassuring smile. The tension in the store started to fade, and a quiet sense of calm settled over the crowd. It was a victory, not just for Emma, but for anyone who had ever felt powerless in the face of cruelty. The moment had passed, and yet its impact would be felt long after the man left the store. As soon as the man muttered his apology and quickly turned to leave, Emma felt an overwhelming sense of relief flood over her. The tension in her body, which she hadn't even realized had been building, finally began to ease. Her shoulders dropped, the weight lifting off her chest as the scene slowly came to a close. She exhaled deeply, her heartbeat returning to a normal pace. She glanced up at Johnny, still standing beside the counter, and met his calm, kind eyes. He hadn't just stepped in to stop the confrontation, he had done so with a genuine care, making sure she felt supported, not just protected. He gave her a small, reassuring smile, and though he didn't say anything, the message was clear: "I've got your back." "Thank you," Emma whispered, her voice catching slightly. She was still processing what had just happened, but the kindness Johnny had shown her was already making her feel stronger. The rude customer, who moments ago had been spewing insults, left the store in a hurry, his head lowered, still muttering under his breath. The air around him seemed to have lost the arrogant edge he once had. The confidence that had driven his harsh words earlier had completely vanished. As he exited, the few remaining customers who had witnessed the scene exchanged glances, many of them nodding in quiet approval of how the situation had unfolded. But Johnny wasn't done. He didn't rush off to the exit. Instead, he calmly walked over to the self-checkout station and began to scan his groceries, all the while glancing back at Emma every now and then with a soft, almost reassuring look. The atmosphere in the store had shifted, the tension melting away as Emma finished bagging the last of the items for his purchase. As Johnny paid, he left a generous tip on the counter, far more than the usual. He smiled warmly at Emma as he handed her the money. "Take care of yourself," he said, his voice low but sincere. "And remember, people like you deserve all the respect and kindness in the world." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest, a wave of gratitude for this unexpected savior who had given her more than just a moment of relief. He had reminded her that she mattered, that what she was doing, even in the face of the rudeness she dealt with every day, was important. He had shown her that, sometimes a simple act of kindness can make all the difference. Johnny didn't wait for a response, but as he turned to leave, Emma felt her heart lighten. She'd be okay. As Emma continued her shift, she couldn't stop thinking about the events that had unfolded in just a few minutes. The sting of the customer's cruel words still lingered, but the weight on her shoulders felt lighter now. The small act of kindness from Johnny had done more for her than she could have imagined. She realized that a single gesture, standing up for someone when they needed it most, could truly change a person's day. She'd spent so many moments quietly enduring disrespect and mistreatment, telling herself that it was part of the job. But Johnny had shown her that she didn't have to stay silent. She didn't have to accept being belittled just because she was doing her best. His courage in standing up to the man, even when it wasn't his fight, had reminded her that there were good people in the world who would take a stand for what was right. Emma felt a new sense of empowerment as she reflected on what had happened. She was no longer just a cashier trying to get through the day. She was someone deserving of respect, just like everyone else. Johnny had not only stood up for her, but he had also given her the strength to stand up for herself moving forward. The lesson was clear. Sometimes, standing up for others, especially when they are vulnerable, is the right thing to do. Even the smallest acts of kindness can make a huge difference. Emma felt ready to face the world again, knowing that help could come from the most unexpected places, and that kindness could ripple out, touching the lives of those who needed it most. Thank you so much for watching. We hope this story inspired you as much as it touched our hearts. It's a powerful reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can make a huge difference in someone's day. Let's remember to stand up for others and spread love and respect wherever we can. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, comment, and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you never miss out on more heartwarming stories like this one. We love hearing your thoughts, so feel free to drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Your support means the world to us. Stay kind, and see you in the next story.